All right, everybody, we are off and rolling. We are Dayton's radio home for Ohio State football. 1410 ESPN Radio and 92.9 No, wait, that's not what it is anymore. That's not what it is anymore.
No, definitely not.
We brought some station that no one's ever heard of.
No.
And everyone's very upset that it's back. Z93, and Scott Sharp is joining us now on these shows moving forward. So a little collision of our Buckeye affiliates. I love it. But yes, Scott Sharp, Z93, welcome. How are you?
Thank you so much. I'm great. It's been one heck of a week. I'll say that.
Yes. So let's talk about that. Again, we're going to get you set for Ohio State football coming up. Dayton's radio home for Ohio State Buckeyes football and basketball all season long. Ohio State, Illinois coming up. We'll have pregame coverage set for you on Z93 and 1410 ESPN Radio coming up at 10:30. Paul Keels, the voice of the Buckeyes. He joins me on my show every Thursday, and we'll have our conversation with him here around the corner as well as we get you set for Ohio State and Illinois. Ohio State's second top 25 showdown of the season, and we'll talk about some of the other top matchups in the Big Ten. But let's talk about your first week. Let's talk about Z's first week. It's not the first week of Z93, but it's the first week since it's returned.
Right.
Is it everything you thought that it would be in week one?
It is way more than I ever could have imagined. Yeah. I figured it was going to be a big deal, but nothing like this. I mean, it's been insane, Justin. Just insane in a great way.
So I moved here about 15 years ago, and I started working in radio about 10 years ago. And all I kept hearing from people is, oh, yeah, Z93, no, WGTZ, Z93. I'm like, no, it's at the time we were Soft Rock, and then it went to Jack. But all I kept hearing about is Z93. That's all I heard about. And then for years, there'd been rumors of us kicking the tires on potentially pulling the trigger to do it. Shout out to Connoisseur Media, who took over, bought Alpha, and then obviously greenlit everything and got the wheels in motion. And we had the right people in place. Shout out to Kev. Shout out to Brett, everyone behind the scenes to help get that done. To Joel, the program director. And then yourself. I mean, what was that? So when you got that call that, hey, Z might be coming back, are you interested? What was your initial
I could not say yes quick enough. I couldn't believe it was going to happen. I mean, it was 2007 when Z went off the air, and I haven't done radio since like 2012, right? But still, I would see people out all the way up until the relaunch, people asking me, hey, Z93 ever going to come back? Ever going to come back? So when I got that call from Brett, I was like, absolutely, I am in. Let's go.
And I love these, and I learned all these new radio terms as far as what was going down with when they were about to announce the change to Z, stunting, and people were losing their mind. Why are they playing Hit the Road Jack over and over and over? Well, I thought it was a good one.
It was a great one, right?
Yes, I thought that was a great. I mean, it was easy. It made all the sense in the world. It was perfect. But a lot of people didn't understand it. They were furious. The cops were called.
Are you serious?
Cops literally showed up here when Joel was here and Kev was here and our engineer was here because a listener had thought that something had happened to the DJ in the building. And it's a wild, connection. I don't know. But yes, I thought that was kind of wild.
Yeah, it's been fun, though. It's been fun. Thanks for having me on here.
Yeah, so we're going to talk Ohio State football coming on in just a moment, but Z93 listener reunion party. Tell everyone a little bit about that, because a week from today, that'll be going down.
Yeah, 6 to 8 o'clock at Harrigan's Irish Tavern, and it's on Marshall Road right here in Kettering. It's going to be a great time. The first 93 people that show up are going to get T-shirts plus live music. Harrigan's has got great food. Highly recommend their pizza if you've never had it. And, of course, Spirits are going to have all the games on. They've got TVs everywhere, also out on the patio. So it's just going to be an absolute bash a week from today at 6 o'clock, Harrigan's in Kettering.
All right, well, good stuff. All right, so Ohio State, Illinois, top 25 showdown. Now, you were at the game last week, right? Whenever I reached out to you, I think you were going to Columbus for the night game. How was the game?
Didn't go because everything was going on.
No, you didn't.
Once the station relaunched, I was just getting blown up. I decided not to do it. Just everything got crazy. So yeah.
Well, either way, it was close at first. It was tied up at 0-0, and then Ohio State never looked back from there. That's usually how most of these games go.
Yeah, their defense is insane right now.
It's insane, and it's one of those things where we thought that the strength was going to be obviously the passing game, and it's a very solid strength of the team. But they're not where they're at right now without that defense. It's actually allowed Julian Sayin, the first-year quarterback for Ohio State, to develop, to get comfortable, to make some mistakes. He made mistakes against the likes of Grambling State and, of course, Ohio, the Bobcats. But he's been phenomenal against the Power 4 opponents. Now, a lot of people were criticizing Ryan Day's play calling initially. I actually think that was him coaching. That was him coaching the player, coaching the situation.
Absolutely.
Fans don't get that all the time, But I think the fact that he had those turnovers against Grambling State and Ohio, that was them opening up a little bit. Let's see what he's learned. And then they kind of put the clamps on a bit. But I thought last Saturday was his best game, throwing over 300 yards, multiple touchdowns. And then to not just have Jeremiah Smith be one of the focal points, to have another receiver in Carnell Tate, have 160 or whatever it was yards that he had. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I thought he was going to break Jackson Smith and Jigba's record for a second there, right? Because that first half was insane for him. But yeah, what a great game.
And one thing too, and well, you'll hear it when we get to our conversation with Paul Keels in a moment. Usually when you're a first-year quarterback, you have good receivers, that's a great thing. But when you have a guy that's being labeled as potentially the best receiver in Ohio State history, if his career continues on this projection or trajectory, I was worried that could be a bad thing when you have a young quarterback that's going to panic if things don't go well and just try to force him the football. It's actually not what he's done at all. That's what made last week so impressive. He's continued to get Jeremiah Smith the football while Carnell Tate continued to eat as well. I just think the balance of the offense, Bo Jackson, a freshman running back, Lamar Bo Jackson. How could you not be good? His parents set him up to succeed, not with the genes, but with the name.
Absolutely.
The name. How could you fail when you're named Lamar Bo Jackson at the end of the day? But great balance, the run game with all new running backs, new quarterback, new roles across the board. Ryan Day, just unbelievable job right now.
And I think he deserves a ton of credit. Ryan Day's showing he's a great coach. He can adjust to the strengths of his team. I mean, when he came in, he was the quarterback. It was all offense. The strength of his team is the defense, and bringing the quarterback along slowly, giving him the confidence. I mean, it just goes to show how great of a coach Ryan Day is. Big props.
Not bad for a guy that everyone wanted fired last Thanksgiving.
He proved that team should have won that game. They went on that run 4 straight in a row. It just shows they should have beat Michigan.
His obsession with because everyone kept knocking Ohio State and saying they're not a tough football team. And that he was sensitive to that because after the win over Notre Dame, it was either the year before, whenever it was, we're a tough football team. Remember him screaming at the reporter. And it's like, that's such a weird thing to be obsessed with. Yes, you want to be a tough football team, but you just won the game. Who cares? And he was obsessed with being viewed as a tough football team. He didn't just want to win with the finesse passing game. He wanted to run it down their throats, and he set them up to fail. Not saying they weren't a tough football team, but that's not how they were built. They were built on the outside with the great wide receivers and the arm of Will Howard and great running backs, yes, and Quinshawn and Trevion. But once they opened that up and leaned into the finesse side, then everything else took care of itself, as we saw. But yeah, Ryan Day, everyone wanted him gone not even a year ago, and now probably being viewed as the best coach in football right now with the way they just continue to win big game after big game.
Yeah, now we're all hoping, please don't go pro. Right?
Yeah, a year ago, I was like, hey, how about that Colts job? How about you go pursue something?
Right.
As far as that goes. Now, you joked earlier before we hit this, you said that you're glad you didn't have to do this after the Michigan game last year. So were you one of those anti-Ryan Day people?
Absolutely. I mean, immediately after the game ended, you see them planting a flag, on the O, and just the emotion took over. And I, of course, like every other Buckeye fan, we were calling for his head. And man, I'm glad my emotion. I'm glad I'm not in charge. We're fans, which is short for fanatic, right? Thank God there are calmer heads that are making the decisions.
And that always led to the big debate about, would you rather win a national championship in the same season you lose to Michigan or beat Michigan and not win a national championship? I don't know where you're at with that, but
give me the natty.
Okay, see, thank you. The truth serum people out there, they're like, no, it's all about Michigan. I'm like, no, it's a sales slogan that the school uses out in recruiting and just to build it up. It means everything to them. Don't get me wrong. They beating Michigan it's a lot. It's everything, but it's not everything.
Right.
Every sport in the world is about winning a championship. It's not about winning one game and one game only, because why even go into the playoff last year? Our season's done. We lost to Michigan. Why even compete? No, they rallied and came back together. I thought that was Ryan Day's most impressive feat. Yes, he's lost to Michigan 4 straight times, but you saw that dazed look in his eyes after the game, and everyone just the emotions, as you talked about. He somehow got that group to rally and to come back less than a few weeks later. James Franklin loses to Oregon and they pout for a week and lose to UCLA, who I don't want to get
unbelievable
coach in the middle of the season. That's the good job that Ryan Day did mentally, getting that group to refocus. Not all coaches can do that.
And I think what we need to realize as fans that I guess it would be 2 years ago now, that Ohio State Michigan game, the year that Michigan went on to win the national title, that's the last time that game's going to mean as much, because now it's a 12-team playoff. I mean, yes, of course we want to beat them, but it's never going to matter as much as it did when we were growing up. It just isn't.
Because it used to be the winner that you couldn't accomplish your ultimate goal of winning a championship unless you beat one another. because that was the roadblock in the way. You have to get through that team to get to the Big Ten championship, to get to the Rose Bowl, to get to the championship or whatever. But that's not the case. That's why a couple of years ago when they lost to Michigan, they make a field goal. They beat Georgia. They're the ones beating up on TCU in the national championship game. Not Georgia as far as that goes. And that would have proven that year that you could win a title while losing them. Now this year should be the year where you win a title and beat Michigan. It's the best of both worlds. And yeah, that's how you silent that.
It would be nice, but I have a feeling Bryce Underwood's going to have something to say about that.
And it's at Michigan too.
Yeah.
It's at Michigan. But Ohio State, they're at Michigan to close out the regular season, but they are at Illinois coming up here in just a little bit. We'll have pregame coverage for you on the radio side, Z93 and 1410 ESPN Radio at 10:30. Ohio State, the number 1 team in the country, undefeated, reigning defending national champions, of course, 5-0 on the season, 2-0 in Big Ten play. Going to take on their third Big Ten opponent of the season as they are at number 17 Illinois. Illinois 5-1 on the year. And the impressive thing about Illinois is, well, what was unimpressive was not just that they lost to Indiana a few weeks ago. You could lose, but you can't get embarrassed. And Scott, they lost to Indiana at Indiana, yes, but 63-10.
That's insane. That's insane. That says a lot about that team was not ready. But of course, Indiana was a buzzsaw. I mean, I'm curious to see what team we get to play against with Illinois. I assume they've got a good defense, but Indiana showed nah.
Well, so then you find out when I start looking more into it in a conversation with Paul Keels, which we'll hear in a moment. Illinois was missing all their secondary. Their entire secondary was depleted due to injury that game. But I'm like, there still has to be something there, right? But that's the difference between the Illinois and the Ohio States of the world. Ohio State can lose a defensive back or two and have very capable guys behind. You just don't have that kind of depth that Illinois and others, I'm assuming. But it's also Indiana. You give up 63 points to Indiana. But we talked about mental toughness earlier. Ryan Day getting Ohio State to buy back in after that tough loss against Michigan, and for them to put that behind them and rally mentally and go on to win a national title. To Illinois' credit, not even a week later, they had USC come into town, and then they beat the big branded USC Trojans, who were number 21 in the country at the time. They won 34-32 against USC. They beat Purdue last week. Look, I don't think they're beating Ohio State today. I think there's going to be some resistance, but it's a mentally tough football team. They're going to be mentally. You might have overlooked Indiana a few weeks ago. They're not overlooking Ohio State.
No, nobody. We're going to definitely get their best shot. There's no doubt about that. This is basically their chance to get in the playoff, right? If they lose this, they're probably not making it.
No.
So we're definitely going to get their A game. It's going to be a tough game. I a little nervous about this one, Justin, just a little bit.
Leave your guys' thoughts, your score predictions, everything down in the chat below. Of course, we'll highlight some of those. But Ohio State, again, at Illinois today. Illinois will be at Washington next week, and then they'll have Rutgers, Maryland, Wisconsin, Northwestern. Illinois can lose today by possession. If they show that they could be on the field with Ohio State for 4 quarters. The committee has proven to overlook losses due to injuries. The problem is it's one thing if you lose by possession or two. That 63-10 is kind of tough, but they did beat USC. You beat USC, you hang in there with Ohio State, and then you run the table with wins over Washington, Rutgers, Maryland, Wisconsin, Northwestern. It almost does them a favor by not playing in the Big Ten championship. I said last year, Indiana, they caught a break by not having to play in the Big Ten championship because you pick up that loss in that title game, you're not making the playoff. But I don't think Illinois is making the postseason, but we'll find that out. We'll know today if they're going to be a postseason caliber team.
Yeah.
So, but all right, good stuff. Justin Kinner, Scott Sharp with you here again. Z93, 1410 ESPN Radio. Pre-game coverage begins at 10:30. We're going to hand this off to our conversation that we had with Paul Keels. Paul Keels joins me on the Justin Kinner Show every Thursday. We kick off the show with the voice of the Buckeyes. We, of course, recap last week's win over Minnesota, preview the Buckeyes matchup coming up here with Illinois, and then we take a look at the schedule around the Big Ten, and Paul Keels gives his thoughts on all of that. If you missed it, don't worry. We have it right here. Here's the voice of the Buckeyes, Paul Keels. Ohio State will pick up with the game against Minnesota last Saturday, of course. It's about what we expected. Ohio State just continuing to roll and looking as solid as can be on both offense and defense. And, of course, emergence of more stars coming up on offense as well.
Yeah, I mean, the story of the game really was the defense, the way they were able to shut Minnesota off and just kind of, it's amazing when you think about some of these defensive stats that you're looking at what Ohio State has done. Now you take some consideration into who they play, but their last 2 opponents, they have held them combined 2 for 22 on third downs. They've only allowed 5 scores all year, 2 passing touchdowns, 3 field goals. They've not allowed any first half touchdowns. But then offensively, as you said, Justin, they were able to to show the explosive ability. A play that'll probably stick in a lot of people's minds is the touchdown pass to Carnell Tate, mostly because you saw Julian saying fake a handoff to a running back, fake a reverse to Jeremiah Smith, and about 4 or 5 defenders followed Jeremiah Smith, and it just set the table for that long touchdown pass to Carnell Tate. So defense playing at a high level, offense showing its explosive abilities.
Paul Keels with us here, voice of the Buckeyes, as we kick the show off here today on a Thursday. You mentioned the play to Carnell Tate, but the overall play of Carnell Tate, 9 catches, 183 yards, that touchdown that you mentioned, Jeremiah Smith, 7 catches, 67 yards, 2 touchdowns. We know that Ohio State's never at a shortage of wide receiver talent, no doubt, and we know Jeremiah Smith is the guy, but are you surprised at the leaps that we've seen from Carnell Tate? Just really, he's not, obviously no one's going to overtake Jeremiah Smith as wide receiver 1, but it has been beyond fun watching Carnell Tate just emerge into a star this year, something we're really not surprised at as Buckeye fans, seeing another wide receiver step up and be a big name.
Yeah, I'm not totally surprised. You think back to last year, the game at Northwestern when he had a couple of touchdowns, and that was, Ryan Day had admitted that one of the things they wanted to do with Carnell going to his hometown was get him in the end zone. Folks may or may not be aware that, Carnell's from Chicago. And when he first got to Columbus as a freshman, he endured a horrible tragedy. His mother was killed in a drive-by shooting. And he really was able to get through that difficult time because of the people around him at Ohio State and the way they embraced him. So not only that game, but remember the Texas game, the playoffs, when, the Longhorns really made up their mind they weren't going to let Jeremiah Smith beat him. And I think Carnell had 10 catches in that game. So not totally surprised, but when you look at this offense, it's those two. It's still, I think we're still waiting to see some breakout moments from Brandon Ennis catching the ball. We've seen what the group of tight ends have done. And then, the running backs have been more than serviceable. So it's kind of a pick your poison thing when you're defending Ohio State.
Obviously no one feels bad for any quarterback that has Jeremiah Smith to throw the football to, but sometimes when obviously we're well into the season now, so we don't have to refer to Julian Sayin as a new quarterback, but one of my concerns, if there were any coming into the season, was sometimes when you have a talent like Jeremiah Smith and you have a quarterback that's, obviously trying to come along as the season goes on, you don't want him to become too dependent. I think it's beyond impressive watching just how Jeremiah Smith takes what the offense gives him. Julian Sayin doesn't force the issue, and then also feeling comfortable enough to get so many others involved as well. Just the overall flow of the offense and how comfortable it looks with Jeremiah Smith out there, with replacing some key weapons from last year. It's been pretty exciting to watch as the season's progressed.
It has, and we talked about Julian Sayin and just how comfortable he looks out there throwing the ball. And, one of the things we saw last week, Justin, that we hadn't seen before, he took a couple of pretty good licks, especially on that touchdown pass to Carnell Tate, but, shook him off, got right back after things. But, as we talk about all of that, think about it. 5 games into the season, that offensive line has allowed just 2 sacks. So we certainly know that how well the offensive line plays is going to have a lot to do with protecting the quarterback, letting receivers get open, and opening holes for the running backs.
Next up for the Buckeyes, coming up on Saturday, a noon kick, 10:30 pregame coverage will begin right here on 1410 ESPN Radio and on Z93. You'll hear Paul Keels, of course, getting you set and calling all the action. But, Paul, next up, Illinois. It's a top 25 showdown. The Buckeyes, number 1 in the country, undefeated, but they're going to be on the road at Illinois. Illinois, a big opportunity from them. We talked about Illinois' tough loss against Indiana a few weeks ago, not just a loss, but getting beat down. But the way that they've bounced back, beating USC, taking care of business like they did last week, it now sets up a big opportunity for Illinois, but another top 25 opportunity for the Buckeyes in their resume moving forward.
Now think about this, Justin. Ohio State has not played Illinois since 2017. They've not played them in Champaign in 10 years. And Ryan Day has never coached as a head coach against Illinois. So it's kind of crazy that here's a team in the Midwest, in the Big Ten, that Ohio State has not seen on their campus in 10 years. However, when you think about what happened to them 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, whenever it was against Indiana, Ryan Day's talked about throw that one out. And, keep in mind, too, Illinois was down multiple defensive backs in that game, whether it was by injury, they lost one of them to a targeting call, another to a concussion. So Ryan Day has basically said, throw that out. That's not the team that they're going to see. And Illinois has rebounded nicely. A nice come-from-behind win against USC. They're going to Purdue and beating a Purdue team the way that they should. So it's a team that, they defensively are very difficult. They lead the nation in forcing 8 fumbles. So that's something that certainly will be a concern. They've recovered 8 of them. They forced 7, I should say. But then offensively, what makes them tick is a third-year starter, Luke Altmaier, who's a transfer, but he's in his 3rd year starting at Illinois. Hank Beatty, their receiver, coming off a big day last week. A couple of very good running backs. So it's a football team that, they've won 15 games in the last 2 years. So Brett Bielema has got something good cooking in Champaign.
Yep, and we're this far into the season. Ohio State's played a lot of home games, only one road game. Of course, the win 24-6 on the road at Washington. This only being their second road game of the season. Of course, a top 25 opponent in Illinois. Again, just the schedule just continue to move along. Ohio State going to be on the road a lot, as we talked about last week. 3 of the next 4 weeks will be on the road. Their next home game will be against Penn State coming up here in a few. Let's talk about Penn State, of course, because, it wasn't a bad loss to Oregon. Obviously, there's expectations for Penn State to be a national championship contender, but there's no shame in losing to Oregon. The Buckeyes won the title last year while losing to Oregon in the regular season, but there might be a little shame when you provide the first win of the season to a team that fired their coach in the middle of the year in front of a couple hundred fans. What happened for James Franklin and Penn State this past weekend?
And not only did UCLA fire their head coach a few weeks ago, going into that game last week, during the week they got rid of their offensive coordinator and just assigned a new play caller on Tuesday of last week. So what happened? I have no idea, Justin. I would have never seen that coming. Now, Penn State came back from a big deficit, made a game out of it, had chances, but couldn't execute late in the game when they really needed to. You just don't know if that was a one-time flash in the pan, new voice, shaking everybody up after the coach was fired. And, Nico Iamaleava played the way people have expected him to play, but he hadn't all year leading up to that point. But that was a real head scratcher. And I feel for Northwestern going to Penn State this week, because that's probably not going to be a pretty thing, possibly. But that was just a real crazy one. And, it continues to pile on all of the talk about James Franklin not being able to help Penn State win top 5 games. It puts them in a very difficult position now, where if there's any chance of them making the playoffs, they don't control their own fate. However, they've got opportunities out there in front of them, including the one you mentioned, November 1st in Columbus against Ohio State.
Is that one? I mean, look, we all knew that game is going to be big no matter what, but it's going to feel huge and more desperate now for Penn State, because with 2 losses at this point, you can maybe redeem one of those tough losses with the win over the number 1 team in the country on the road, in Columbus. But does that make that game a must-win for Penn State? I know people hate those labels, but that's a must-win for Penn State in Columbus, correct?
I would think so, because even if they win that game, it's not likely, not impossible, but not likely they can get into the Big Ten championship game with 2 losses. So, for them to have a chance to make the playoffs as an at-large, yes, that would be a must-win. So, but as we know, all games are big when people play Ohio State. But, I think everybody, Justin, would agree, Penn State has more talent than UCLA. Based on the players on the hoof, they should win that game 9 times out of 10. But that's what makes it exciting, that you have to play the game, and they just weren't able to make the plays when they needed to.
One of the losses for Penn State was Oregon, obviously, and Oregon looking ahead right now, again, sitting at number 3 in the country. They're undefeated. They have a big one this week against Indiana. Now, you look at some of these tough schedules around college football after their matchup with Indiana coming up. You got Rutgers, Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota, and then USC and Washington to close it out. But Oregon has a little bit of smooth sailing ahead if they can get past Indiana, who's top 10 in the country. I know Indiana, they've had that big number, or that low number in front of their name last year and this season. Some people don't buy into it. Huge opportunity for Indiana, and another opportunity for Oregon to get another top 10 win on their resume.
Absolutely. And, I think people now have started to become a little more in the believing category about Oregon and what they've done. And I think if you watch the way Dante Moore plays at quarterback, that was probably the biggest question after Dylan Gabriel was gone. I think he's answered that question to this point. It probably will tell us more about Indiana than it will Oregon, even in a defeat. If Indiana is able to go out there and make it a competitive game and lose, then I think we still have to go along with the feeling that Indiana's got something good going. Their schedule's tougher this year than it was last year. And, when their schedule got tough last year, namely when they came to Columbus, they lost. And, Kurt Cignetti even mentioned the 2 most physical teams they played last year were the 2 games they lost, Ohio State and Notre Dame, in the playoffs. So it'll tell us a lot about both teams, but most likely will tell us a little more about Indiana, even should the game not go the Hoosiers' way.
Last one on the way out, Paul. Michigan, number 15 in the country. They're 4-1. Obviously, their only loss of the season coming earlier in the year against Oklahoma. Oklahoma has a big win, a big rivalry game coming up this weekend. But they're going to be on the road at USC. USC, they're 4-1 as well. They're not ranked. They just lost a few weeks ago against Illinois. Two big brands, two of the biggest brands in the Big Ten going head-to-head. I love this matchup, but there's a lot on the line so early in the season. Both teams trying to prevent picking up their second loss so early in the year.
Yeah, there is a lot on the line, and that's another one where we'll see how much Bryce Underwood has grown up at quarterback for Michigan. I think everybody's becoming a believer in what they can do running the football, even with Underwood running it, and certainly he's shown his ability passing. And there's no question that even though they lost the two great defensive players they did last year, Michigan still has good defensive players. So this will tell us a lot. It'll also tell us a lot whether or not USC has taken the steps forward that they really need to take, because, if you think about it, there were a lot of people that thought that Lincoln Riley would be one of those coaches that possibly could be on the hot seat when the season started. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, because, are people going to be believers that USC has improved? This would be a game, if they win, it would help with some of that, but it will also give us maybe a little more of a barometer just where Michigan sits.
Paul Keels, voice of the Buckeyes. You'll hear him this Saturday, Ohio State, Illinois. Noon kickoff. Pre-game coverage will begin at 10:30 right here on 1410 ESPN Radio. Paul Keels, appreciate you, sir. We'll talk next week.
Sounds good, Justin. Take care.
My mic. There we go. And again, that was the voice of the Buckeyes, Paul Keels. He joins me on the Justin Kinner Show every Thursday at 3 o'clock as we kick off the show. But how about those pipes?
I was going to say, if God had a voice.
That's it. Right?
Yeah.
Like right. I know a few people that have do you know Joe Zerhusen with the Reds?
Yes.
PA announcer. He's another one like that. I mean, that's how he talks. Like, people think that that's an announcer voice. No, Paul Keels, that's not an announcer voice. Joe Zerhusen, that's not an announcer voice. Norm Lilly. Norm's another one. You know Norm, right? Yeah. Norm's another one that has just that big booming natural voice or whatever. But yeah.
That's hysteria. Yeah, he's the voice of God.
Yes. But all right, as we wrap this up, again, appreciate you. This is all new with the return of Z. It's just been an outstanding, just a buzz in the building, buzz in the city. It's definitely brought some energy back to radio.
It's been exciting.
Sure.
It's been exciting.
So, and then to add the Buckeye brand on top of it, to go from Z to Buckeye football is pretty exciting. And we have that coming up for you here. 10:30 pregame coverage begins. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us on the social media side. One more time, again, next Saturday. So it's one thing to interact with everyone on social media, people calling in and all that, but a chance for you to reunite with the listeners.
Absolutely. At Bo Harrigan's Irish Tavern here in Kettering. I'm right at the corner of Marshall and Stroop, 6 to 8, October 18th, a week from today. It's going to be great. Got live music. Going to have all the games on, so you don't have to miss any of the sports. And it's great food. It's going to be a lot of fun. Again, a week from today, starting at 6. The first 93 listeners that show up and ask for a T-shirt are going to get a commemorative Z93 reunion T-shirt. So it's going to be a good time. Mo Harrigan's Irish Tavern.
Yep. And by the way, the design for the T-shirt is pretty dang cool. I thought it was just going to be a Z93 just logo, which there's nothing wrong with that. But no, they went all out for this. It's an actual commemorative T-shirt with the date of, for the reunion. We'll share the picture of that on the socials. So you go and check that out. But closing thoughts, score prediction. Who comes out today?
I think it's 38-10 Ohio State.
Only 10. Oh, with that defense, you're right. I'm not used to that. That's been Ohio State's not weakness, but question mark in recent years.
I mean, that'll double what they normally give up. So
I saw a graphic the other day that their defense is giving up 5.5 points per game. That's
crazy.
A weird number.
It is.
It's a weird number, but nonetheless. All right. So you said what
38-10 Buckeyes.
38-10 Buckeyes. I'm going to say, man, do they score under 40? You have 38. I'm going to say I'll go with a 34-17. I'm going to say 34-17. I think Illinois gives them a little bit more resistance, a little bit more of a push. But I'm pulling for your score because I want that defense just to continue to be, because people are already trying to discredit Ohio State early on because, the fact that, Washington's numbers were inflated because they played literally nobody. So saying that they shut down, and I love their quarterback, I love their running back, wide receivers, all that, but saying that they shut them down based on stats built up playing nobody, I'm hearing that. And then, Arch Manning, who I see in every underwear commercial, socks commercial, every commercial you could think of, a man's bag commercial, whatever it is, he's not that good.
No, he's not. He's not that good. But
so that does work against the narrative or the perception of Ohio State's defense. But at the same time,
don't we hear this every year, though?
Every year,
Every year.
Actually, every year the defense usually is matching the crap that people are talking about it.
Fair.
It's shutting down. Even if you're saying they're bad teams, in years past, they would give up big chunks of yardage and points to bad teams. They're not doing that this year. But I think that defense is legit. I think it's legit. So either way, yeah, I'll go 34-17.
Okay.
Buckeyes coming up here today. All right, good stuff, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Every Saturday, the crossover in Z93 and 1410 ESPN Radio. We'll bring you our Buckeye Pre-Game Preview. Of course, Z93 and ESPN Radio. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for hanging out. You can catch start playing on Z93. I can't wait. All right, good stuff. So next week, Buckeye Pre-Game Preview, Z93, 1410 ESPN Radio, Buckeyes, Illinois, 10:30. Pre-game coverage begins with the noon kick.